Good morning and welcome to the Unity Movement. I decided to release a message today, and I'm guessing that has been my problem. And let me apologize for not releasing messages for probably over a month now. I guess the word decide is the operative word that has gotten in the way. I've crazily thought that, and I don't know that it was conscious, but I thought that it was about my deciding to release a message, my deciding that it was time to do this or time to do that, forgetting that it's really not about me, but it's about God, and it's about doing what He wants done when He wants it done. And unfortunately, I think I've gotten into a place of thinking that it's about me, not that I think that one should worship me or one should, it should be all about me. But I think, like so many of us, we get into this place of thinking that, okay, I'll do it when I can do it, or I'll do it when I feel like doing it, or I'll do it when, the time is right to do it, not realizing that it's really not about our time, and it's not about how we feel. It's not about what we think, but it's about being able to do it anyway. When God says to do it, that we move anyway. And today I'm just going to speak a message to you that may be fitting, dealing with some of the things that are going on in the U.S. of A. in Baltimore, with the racial tensions being what they are. Today I want to speak from a message, Uniting the Divide. Uniting the Divide. And this message kind of came to me because I was thinking, why is it that at this particular moment in time that humanity is more divided than we've ever been at any particular time in the human experience? We are more divided today than we've ever been divided. We are divided, many of us, based on the names that we use to refer to God. We allow these things to divide us. We're divided based upon our perspectives of God, whether He's a male, whether He's a female, whether He's the God of Christians, whether He's the God of Muslims, whether He is Yahweh, Jehovah, or Allah. We're divided by these things. And again, it made me think about the fact that why is it that we are more divided today than we've ever been in the human experience? And I just started to think about and analyze some of the things that divide us. And not only are we divided over the names that we use to refer to God or the perspectives of God, we're divided by the very religions that espouses God's principles and characteristics. Jews are divided from Muslims. Muslims are divided from Christians. The religious is divided from the non-religious. And you have a situation where humanity is more divided today than we have ever been in any particular point in human history. As I say, you look at Baltimore, and it's just a microcosm of the entire globe, and there are racial tensions. We're divided based on our race, our skin complexion. We're divided based upon our nationalities. More than a geographical divide, we are divided emotionally and spiritually based upon one person living in one region in the earth and another person living in another region in the earth. We're divided by our politics. Well, there's Democrats, and then there's Republicans. There are independents, and all of them seem to get a kick out of highlighting the divide that separates them one from another. We are divided culturally by age. The young looks at the old with a disdain. The elderly look at the young with a disdain, and we are divided. Not only are we divided by those things, we're divided by education. The educated looks at the undereducated in a certain way. The wealthy looks at the impoverished in a certain way and divide themselves from one another. Even sexual orientation divides us. Heterosexuals look at homosexuals and are divided. And again, it just brings me to the reality that we are more divided today in our time than at any other time in human history. And I know many of us probably think that we are justified in separating or dividing ourselves based on those reasons. And in fact, many would go as far as to suggest that God wants us to be separated based on the factors that I've listed previously. And I recognize the differences. I recognize that we've been taught to be divided based on those things. And I'm here not to, beat up anybody today. I'm here not to exacerbate the divide. I'm here only to help us to move past the divide. I'm here not to make one group feel better than the other group, make one group feel justified and validated in the fact that they separate based on the things that we use to separate ourselves, but to help us to move past seeing human labels to actually seeing what God would have us see when looking at one another. I'm here today to help you to see each other the way that God sees us, and then be united based on his will being done and not man's will being done. I'm here to help us to begin to usher God's kingdom in the earth, that we might improve ourselves, that we might improve our families, that we might improve our communities, and that we might improve this world that we are all a part of. And by the end of this message, I can assure you that you will understand how we go from being a divided people to a united people in God and in good. And secondly, I can assure you that by the end of this message, you will have to answer the question, do I align myself with God's will or with man's will? And it's vitally important, beloved, almost imperative, that we begin aligning ourselves with God's will and begin seeing each other the way that God sees us. And it's important because if we continue to be united and divided based on man's will being done instead of God's will being done, the prejudices that causes blacks and whites to be divided will ultimately lead us into an all-out civil war. You see, if we don't begin to close our natural eyes and begin opening our spiritual eyes, our desire for religious supremacy will only exacerbate the ungodly murders by Christians against Muslims, by Muslims against Christians and Jews, and by the Jews against Muslim Palestinians. If we continue leaning to our own understanding and not God's understanding, our nations will continue warring with each other, creating mayhem for millions of people that lack the political and financial power to change things. Republicans and Democrats will continue to vilify each other instead of realizing that united we stand and divided we fall. Ultimately, if we don't begin to move according to God's will, we will begin and I guess I won't say we will begin, but we will hasten the process, the road that we're on to complete self-annihilation. We will completely destroy the human race if we don't begin uniting and dividing ourselves based on the things that God would have us to unite or divide ourselves on. But on the other hand, by uniting according to God's will, we can begin to experience the favor of God in this earth as seen in the days of Jesus of Nazareth. We can begin to eradicate a lot of the hunger and suffrage around the world. We can create a less violent world because we'll see the benefits of being more respectful, more tolerant, more loving, more peaceful, more compassionate, more forgiving, and more merciful to one another. You see, we can change the world because we'll experience for the first time in the history of the human experiment, a people united in fighting the real enemy of God. See, we've allowed man to sidetrack us, and we've allowed the divisive tactics of man to separate and divide us. But I'm here to tell you, beloved, that God's will for the things that should unite or divide us are completely different than what man has taught us. We can create a less violent world. We can usher God's kingdom in this earth. We can begin to solve and eradicate global poverty and suffrage. I mean, I want you to imagine a united people and you being a part of that united group of people. I mean, imagine the power and the confidence that you would feel if you knew that you are a part of a $1 billion, a billion person group or crusade. United not because you look the same way, not because you were the same, you belong to the same ethnicity, not because you belong to the same religious organization, not because you belong to the same political affiliations, but just imagine for just a moment that you are a part of a group of people, 1 billion large, that had decided that, they would look past human labels, look past skin complexion, look past religious ideologies, look past nationalities, look past sexual orientation, and decide that instead of looking at those things, that they would be united based upon a common commitment to good thoughts, a common commitment to speaking good words, and a common commitment to engaging in good actions. I mean, don't you agree that if we had collectively a group 1 billion strong that were committed to good thoughts, good words, and good actions, that we could completely change the dynamics of this earth? Don't you agree that if we got it right according to God's will and united ourselves around the things that He wants us to be united around, and divided based upon the things that He wants us to be divided on, that things would be drastically better? Not just individually, but as a whole. Now I want you to close your eyes for a moment, and I want you to imagine that you were born blind. Didn't know what I looked like. Hadn't seen the difference in human skin complexions, and had no reason to perceive me as a threat based on my color. Now, while your eyes are closed, I want to ask you a question. Would me being black and you being white make a difference in your interaction with me? I mean, if I wasn't a threat, if you didn't know my color from yours because you had been born blind, would my skin complexion being different than yours make a difference in your interaction with me? On the other hand, while your eyes are still closed, I want to ask you, would me treating you with love or hate make a difference in your interaction with me? Well, beloved, I'm here because I just believe that what's really important in our interactions with one another is to be able to be blind to the physical colors of our skin, but to be able to see beyond that, to be able to see our heart, to be able to hear our words, to be able to see our actions and decide whether those actions are actions of love or actions of hate. And I'm here to tell you, beloved, that God wants us to be united one person to another based on our commitment to either being governed by love or hate. You see, He doesn't expect us to be committed to and operating in love and then be united with hate. I mean, just imagine that you were severely ill, without financial resources, homeless, hungry, and in need of a medical procedure. I mean, just go with me. And I want you to think about being in that particular predicament. And then I want you to ask yourself, would you refuse help because your Good Samaritan happened to be black and you're white? That your Good Samaritan happened to be Muslim and you're Christian? that your Good Samaritan happened to be Democrat and you're Republican. He happened to be American and you're Asian. Would you refuse a life-saving, free surgical procedure because your physician happened to be homosexual and you are heterosexual? See, I ask this because too often we allow those labels to divide us and cause us, to move away from God's will being done. And we adapt man's will in exchange for God's will. I ask you, would his or her religion, would his or her ethnicity, nationality, or sexual orientation really matter? Or would you be able to see past those labels, to see compassion and goodwill over heartlessness and selfishness? You see, I'm here to tell you, beloved, that when God looks at us in calling us to be either united or divided, he expects us to see past our human labels, to see the human heart, realizing that a good man out of the good treasure in his heart brings forth good. And goodwill and compassion, beloved, is good. We've got to understand that God is synonymous with good. He's not synonymous with Christianity, Muslim, Islam, Judaism. He's synonymous with good. Satan is the epitome of evil. Not black, white, Democrat, or Republican, yet we use those labels to identify one another instead of looking past those labels to see the heart of man, to see or to hear the words of man, and to interact with the actions of man. I want you to travel backwards with me for just a moment. And imagine that you lived in the earth before the Hebrews arrived in Canaan. Before there were any forms or mention of organized religion, before we communicated with writing or in writing or with various languages. And I ask you to do that because I'm curious to know what your thinking is as it relates to this particular question. I ask you, would you have been divided from me because I prayed to the Creator facing the east and you prayed to the Creator facing the west? Or because we were from two different regions in the earth, and according to my native language in my region of the earth, we refer to the Creator God as Jehovah, and you refer to, according to your native language, the Creator God as Allah. Would you have, if you didn't have the learning of organized religion to teach you that you are to separate yourself based upon those things, would you have separated yourself from me based on those things? Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about a time before there was the Torah, before the Tanakh, before the Bible, before the Old Testaments or the New Testaments, before the Quran. I'm talking about a time before organized religions were created, before religions began fighting over the correct name of the Creator God. Would you have been able to unite with me based on the reality that we both agreed that the Creator wanted, and not only wanted, but expected us to operate in honesty over dishonesty? Could we have united ourselves together based upon our commitment to operate in honesty? And would our honesty have created a better world for the both of us? You see, he expects us to operate in a spirit of mercy over cruelty. See, because I just believe that when we begin operating in mercy, mercy begins to change the dynamics of this earth. Mercy begins to change the interactions that we have with one another. And I just believe that when God looks at us and says to us to be united one person to another, that he expects us to unite ourselves, being governed by mercy and dividing ourselves from those that are committed to being governed by cruelty. You see, it's because we won't close our natural eyes to see out of our spiritual eyes that causes us such confusion in the earth. I mean, all we allow ourselves to see are human labels. And we don't allow ourselves to see past those things to begin to see each other the way that God sees us. And then be united or divided based upon the way that God sees us. Well, beloved, I'm here to tell you again that when God looks at us, He sees past our religion. He sees past our politics. He sees past our nationality, past our wealth, our education, or our sexual orientation. And he divides us based on the characteristics that are in line with his will being done. This is why Jesus of Nazareth was able to warn, not everyone that says unto him, Lord, Lord, would enter into heaven, but only they that did the will of the Father which is in heaven. And according to the will of our Father in heaven, he divides us and expects us to be divided based upon our hearts, our words, and our actions, whether they are good or evil. He sees past human labels and divides us based on love or hate. Because he realizes, and we should realize, that it's the characteristic of love that saves lives, yet it's the characteristic of hate that destroys lives. You see, he divides us based upon honesty and dishonesty. This is why Jesus was also able to warn us that every idle word that a man shall speak shall he have to give an account for on his day of judgment. You see, God expects us to be divided based on the characteristics of peace over violence. And this means that sometimes if he divides us and expects us to be divided based on the characteristic of peace over violence, that this means that sometimes we've got to separate and divide ourselves from our own selves. You see, sometimes we've got to just divorce ourselves from our own craziness. And I'm talking about me too, beloved. You see, because God is not a respecter of persons, and he expects that all of us that are committed to operating with the spirit of compassion and mercy to divide ourselves from those committed to being heartless, hateful, merciless, inhumane, and cruel. And if we be honest with ourselves, we'll have to admit that neither of those characteristics, neither of any of the characteristics that I've spoken about today are not based on the human labels of Christian, Muslim, black, white, Jew, Gentile, rich, poor, educated, undereducated, Democrat, Republican, American, Iraqi, heterosexual, or homosexual. Those things are based upon the condition of our hearts. You see, because a good man out of the good treasure in his heart brings forth that which is good. And conversely, an evil man out of the evil treasure in his heart brings forth that which is evil. So, beloved, I'm here to help us to understand that we can begin to usher God's kingdom into the earth and experience corporate favor if we would only see past the will of man to begin to see the will of God and to be united based upon our willingness to be forgiven, our willingness to be patient, our willingness to be tolerant of others. You see, the characteristics that, or the categories that God puts us in when looking at us are the characteristics or the categories of forgiveness, or either you're in the category of being one committed to retribution. You see, you're either in the category of being patient or you're in the category of being impatient. You see, you're either in the category of being tolerant or you're in the category of being prejudiced and biased. You see, you got to understand that forgiveness averts wars. Patience promotes peace. And tolerance promotes goodwill. And these are the things that can help us to improve our personal lives, our families, our communities, and this world. Beloved, I'm here to say that we can create a less violent world if we would begin seeing past the divisive tactics of man and begin realizing that the only two labels that really matters to God are the labels of good and evil, and decide that it's more beneficial for us to identify and then to be united based on the characteristics of respect and loyalty. You see, I want you to decide with me today, beloved, and I'm here to tell you that to decide means to cut off all other options. I want want you to decide with me today, beloved, that you will begin treating others with respect and that you will begin being loyal to God and good while uniting with like-minded people that may not look like you. They may not talk like you. They may not even worship like you. But you got to understand that it's time to see beyond human labels. It's time to begin to look beyond the things that we can see and then to begin to look at one another through the lenses of a spiritual eye. I want you to begin looking at a person's heart, listening to his words and looking at his actions, and then decide based upon those things whether he stands for God or whether he stands for man. See, it's those things that God look at when he's looking at us. And if we would only unite according to God's will of fairness and humility, we could begin to eradicate the caste systems around the world that only serve to divide us from each other. In most cases, dividing good from good, making good oppose good, which only prevents us from collectively focusing on opposing and defeating the real enemy of God, which is evil. You see, beloved, it doesn't benefit us. We don't improve ourselves. We don't improve our families. We don't improve our communities. And we do not improve the world by fighting over skin complexions. We don't improve those things fighting over the names of the Creator. We don't improve our conditions in this earth fighting over religious supremacy, over political parties, or over sexual orientations. In fact, all we do is further move us closer to self-destruction, self-annihilation. What changes the world and us in the process is fighting over good versus evil. Deciding that we will unite with others who will stand for God and good thoughts, and speaking good words, and in engaging in good action, setting aside man's divisive tactics that ultimately serve to destroy us and destroy our world. Now, doesn't it make sense? I know I've got a little animated, and I don't mean to, but, I am who I am. And my love for humanity and my desire to get you to see the simplicity of God and his will for humanity sometimes causes me to get a little bit excited. But doesn't it make sense what I've said, that love over hate, peace over violence, respect and goodwill over disrespect and cruelty? Honesty over dishonesty? I mean, doesn't it make sense to you? I mean, just imagine that if we could see past all of the things that we've been taught about how we should divide ourselves. Just imagine that the people that are committed to good, solely taking away the human labels, black, white, Christian, Muslim, Jew, Asian American, homosexual, heterosexual. Take away all those things and just imagine the power that we could possess in ushering God's kingdom into the earth if we all stood united, committed to good. Imagine that all Christians, Muslims, Jews, blacks, white, Hispanics, educated, the uneducated, the rich, the poor, Democrats, Republicans, Americans, non-Americans, came together and decided to be united in God and his universal characteristics of good. Just think how we could completely change the dynamics of this earth. And I'm here to tell you, beloved, that that's not far-fetched. It's not even a long ways off. It's just a matter of us making a decision. I said that by the end of this message, you will have to decide whether you will align yourself with God's will or with man's will. And here I am at this particular juncture in the message saying that the things that I see and I hope for this earth is not far-fetched. In fact, at this particular moment, we have the ability to decide who and what we will stand aligned with. Will we stand with God and his will being done, or will we stand with man and our will be done? You see, it's not about me. crazily thought that it was. I thought that, well, God had given me a word that he hadn't given anyone else. And it was about me being the one that called all of humanity back to God. But it's not about me. It's bigger than me. It never was about me. It never was about me. I realize that now. But I also know that where two or more is gathered, that God is in the midst. So I ask you to join me on Facebook at United for Good. That's UNITED for the number good, GOOD. Or just send me an email at join, JOIN, at unitedforgood.com. That's join, JOIN, at UNITED for the number good.com. And I'll keep you up to date on where and how the unity movement is changing the world. And I'll continually ask you to join me. But above all those requests, beloved, I ask that you commit to being better today than you were on yesterday. I challenge you to create better thoughts, to use better words, and to engage in better actions, that together we change the world for God and for good. I thank you. I look forward to seeing you on my Facebook page, and I look forward to receiving your emails asking, where are we next? And how can you be a part of the crusade, changing the world for God and for good? Until next time, goodbye.